Hello and welcome to Top Story. It's been welcomed as the biggest step in Middle East peacemaking in years. The United States is hosting a conference in Annapolis near Washington, D.C., attended by around 40 countries. It's a rare chance to bring two key players into the equation, Israel's arch-foe Syria and Saudi Arabia, the motor of Arab overtures to the Jewish state. But even if the inclusive format gives the ailing peace process a new lease of life, can the Israeli and Palestinian leaders deliver on any commitments? Both face big domestic obstacles. And given the instability in Lebanon and Iraq, as well as tensions over Iran's nuclear ambitions, isn't this conference biting off more than it can chew? To discuss the realities of the Annapolis summit, I'm joined now in the studio by Jolyon Howarth, a visiting professor of international relations at Yale University in the United States. Professor Howarth, thank you very much for joining us today. First of all, if you look at the history of Middle East attempts at peacemaking, how important is this one?
I think this one's really very important, if only because everybody has become so pessimistic, so sort of negative, nothing can happen, that this appears to be the last chance. Obviously, it isn't the last chance, but it is a very, very real possibility to get some movement after 7 years of stalemate. I think that's the most important thing. We've had no movement whatsoever throughout the Bush administration, largely through American lack of desire to get involved. Now that desire is there. We have the possibility, we have the players, and we just need the process now.
So you wouldn't share the cynic's view that this is a photo opportunity basically before President Bush goes away?
No. I think that there's been a genuine turnaround in the White House. Condoleezza Rice has been effective in switching Bush's attention to the Middle East peace process, where previously he was not particularly involved or even bothered, and certainly America has not been engaged. American engagement is absolutely essential to get any movement on this. So I think that there is a genuine desire, both in the State Department and in the White House, to use this as the last opportunity during the Bush administration to get some movement.
And of course it is the first time that all these Arab states have been brought in at that level in the United States, since the Madrid conference, in fact, in '91.
Yes, the involvement of the Arab states is important, but it isn't as crucial, actually, as the ultimate involvement of Hamas. We can talk about that separately. The Arabs can deliver a great deal. In particular, they can reassure Israel about borders, about long-term peace, about all of the issues which has plagued Israel, essentially. If the Arab states can deliver that sort of global package, then that's an enormous step forward as far as Israeli reassurances are concerned.
But for that wider Arab delivery to happen, of course, first there has to be a real process between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and it's always founded in the details, hasn't it? Could you talk us through that?
Yeah, well, the details remain the devil's, in a sense. There are obviously 3 or 4 major issues. On the Israeli side, the status of Jerusalem. That's also a problem for the Palestinians. For both sides, I guess these problems are the same for both sides, looked at from a different direction. The return of the Palestinian refugees, which is something that for the Palestinians is a right in international law. I think they've become sufficiently realistic now that they know this isn't going to happen. Those refugees are not going to return to Israel, or at least not in anything like large numbers. There is a major Palestinian concession there in the offing, I think. As far as final borders are concerned, the Israelis seem now to be prepared to negotiate something on the Golan Heights and recognize that in international law they have to return to something like the borders of 1967.
Well, of course, the roadmap, the previous initiative founded on the question of settlements, the first phase, that's going to come back again, isn't it? Because the Palestinians will still insist on settlements being evacuated. That's not something Ehud Olmert can deliver on right now.
That depends. Settlements has surprised all of us. The withdrawal of the settlements in Gaza was something of a surprise. There is an Israeli willingness to negotiate settlements. I think the Palestinians are prepared to do something less than 100% return to the 1967 borders. The rest is really give and take. We were almost there at Camp David in 2000. That foundered for different reasons. But the parties have been through so much now of a detailed negotiation that they know perfectly well what each red lines are. And the rest is negotiation.
Let's talk about Mahmoud Abbas's position then. What can he actually do in the current state of weakness? And of course, you can bring in Hamas again.
Well, Hamas has to be brought back in. One of the weakest elements in this whole process is the clear American attempt to isolate or marginalize Hamas. You cannot achieve peace other than through negotiations with the people that you are fighting. This has been a long-standing sort of diversion in international relations. When things are going badly, you talk to other people. You have to talk to the people who are opposed to you. So ultimately, Hamas have to be brought back in, and there has to be reconciliation within the Palestinian Authority between the Fatah and the Hamas sides. That is probably the most tricky bit at this point, because Mahmoud Abbas does not have a very strong position. He's really consigned to Ramallah, doesn't even really control the whole of the West Bank.
Of course, and the Israelis will demand that he cracks down on rogue elements in the security services, which
absolutely
is very hard.
But he has been doing that, actually. But of course, there's a limit to the extent to which he can really deliver on that. The ultimate solution to the rogue elements is a lasting peace.
Julian Howarth, what about Syria now? What will have to happen to get Syria on board in this process? It will need more than just talking about the Golan, won't it, to get its influence out of Lebanon, for instance?
Yes, Syria is in a strong position in that it controls a great deal in that region, and particularly the proximity of Lebanon. But at the same time, it's fairly marginalized. It's marginalized within the Arab world, and it's very marginalized within the international community. A great deal of pressure can be put on Syria from the United States, but also from the European Union and from France, which has some clout left there. So I think that the Syrians know, and that's the reason they've come to the conference, that they also have a great deal to gain from this in terms of an ultimate settlement. The Golan is negotiable. There's a lot to talk about, and I think the fact that the Syrians have sent, if only a deputy minister, is a good sign.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we'll have to leave it there. We do have a lot more that we could discuss, but we have a short format, so thank you for being on Top Story. Julian Howarth, a visiting professor of international relations at Yale University, and you can join us on Top Story at the same time tomorrow, or look at this edition on our website. That's www.france24.com. Do stay tuned.
Story, the program dedicated to international news, was brought to you by Le Monde.
Sticking your face in front of a car's exhaust pipe isn't exactly something you'd want to do. But if you did with this car, no problem.
You can actually... I don't recommend you drinking it, but it's fine. There's no taste. It's clean water.
With this revolutionary hydrogen-powered car, Iceland is showing its ambition to become the world's first hydrogen economy. It wants to stop relying on imported oil and become a leader in environmental-friendly technologies. Here in Reykjavik is the world's first hydrogen gas station. It was inaugurated in 2003. It's directly connected to the city's electricity and water networks.
That's where we produce the hydrogen. We actually separate water into oxygen and hydrogen. The oxygen goes up to the atmosphere.
After the electrolysis, the hydrogen is compressed and stocked in these blue cylinders.
There's no emission coming from this facility whatsoever. From the cars using the hydrogen from the station, there's only water coming from them. And all the electricity coming in is produced via renewables, hydropower or geothermal.
Hydro and geothermal power. Thanks to these two clean energy sources, 72% of Iceland's energy is renewable. Iceland now wants to bring the hydrogen technology to its fishing fleet and its public transportation vehicles. The hydrogen-powered buses that have been in service for 3 years now are a proof this is possible.
We have information from operating buses. We have one car at the moment, but we'll have about 30 cars by middle of 2009. And we're also going to install an APU system into a boat.
Iceland has the geological assets to become the clean energy laboratory of the world, and this could help other countries too.
Make the hydrogen from the very hot, high temperatures that you have in the nuclear industry. So France could be not only self-sufficient with electricity, but also with its fuel. There will be local solutions, regional solutions, different solutions for different regions of the world.
Iceland has planned to reach its goal by year 2050. Until then, it will have to overcome two obstacles: how to stock hydrogen in a more efficient way, and how to lower the cost of these batteries that are still 10 times the price of a diesel engine.